Okay. So here we are at the end of 454, last class, yay. And I'm going to do the same lecture topic that I do every class I teach at the end of the semester, because I don't think that we do enough at A&M to teach you how to be successful beyond the technical skills that we teach you. We do a very, very good job of teaching you technical skills of being an engineer. I think we do better than anybody else. But we just don't have the time in the curriculum to do a lot of things, and so I set aside this lecture to talk to y'all, and I'm going to share my thoughts on what it takes to be a successful person and to be successful in your professional life as well. I'm probably not telling you anything you haven't already heard from your parents, your friends, and the how-to books that you may have read. I'm just condensing it down into 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half of relatively rapid-fire numbered list to think about and consider. We've got a little more time in this class than I normally have, so if you have questions as we go along, feel free to ask those questions. I'm doing something different today. I'm actually recording this on video, and the reason for that is I'm a new grandfather. I have no idea if and so Papa G's putting this on there and gonna post it on YouTube at some point so that my new grandson and any as of yet unborn grandchildren will someday be able to look at that when maybe they're in college or at some point later on, and even if I'm not around to tell them and remind them this stuff, it'll be a historical record. So I do want to recognize the names of the people that are graduating. Y'all have worked hard, and you deserve a whoop for your efforts. So congratulations to those of you whose names on the screen. All right. We've had 14 weeks to interact, and this is a class I've never taught before, and so I won't say it's as polished as I like it to be. If I were going to teach it again, I know I'd be doing a better job than I did this semester. But y'all have been a good class, and I hope you'll stay in contact with me over time. I actually like to see former students at the civil engineering tailgate on the drill field every fall, and every now and then I have a reason to ask you questions about what's going on in your professional career and maybe how some of the stuff you learned in the classroom may be of value, or I may want to get one of y'all to come back and talk to a future 454, 307, 457 class. Since I don't do Facebook, even though I have a Facebook page, the best way for you to maintain contact with me is through LinkedIn, okay? If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I would encourage you to set one up. That's how a lot of professionals build a network. I checked the other day when I posted something to Facebook for the first time in about a year about my new grandson. I have 98 Facebook friends. And I'm looking, then I saw my son, he has 1,400 Facebook friends. All right, well, I'm not a social butterfly, that's for sure, on Facebook. But I have a whole lot more LinkedIn contacts. It's in the hundreds. So that is a really good way to have what is essentially a Rolodex. And y'all don't even know what a Rolodex is, but it's how we used to do addresses when they were typed on a sheet of basically cardboard and put in this thing you would turn around to look people up because we didn't have electronic devices. So, as I said, don't necessarily teach you all the things beyond the technical skills to be successful, and so that's what today is about. And I've also posted some supplemental information on the website, and if it's not up there now, I will post it because and it has some stuff, 6 pages, and I'll talk about that at the very end, of business world information, and I'll briefly talk about dining etiquette. I would encourage you to download those. And I've already talked about that. So, a few quick life lessons. Okay. First thing, where should you go to work? Okay. That's up to you, but don't make that decision based on who's paying you the most, because invariably there's a reason why they're paying more. What do you think that reason? Why would they pay more?
Work more.
You're going to have to work harder for it. They demand excellence. They're willing to reward excellence, but they're going to demand excellence. Okay. Now, A&M students do get a premium, I believe, and you're going to get job offers that I believe are going to be better than other students that are graduating from other programs, because I think Aggies are the best. The best way to make that career choice is to pick the job that best aligns with your passion. What is it you want to be doing for a career? What will be the job that when you get up at 6 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning to get ready and get in that car and drive to work is something you're going to be excited about that day? Because the last thing you want is 5 days a week, 50 odd weeks a year to get up in the morning and have the attitude, oh, I gotta go to work, I hate my job. Because that wears on you. You want something that you can be excited about. When you're looking at your job, think about things like, what are the benefits? Because insurance is really, really important. Health insurance and life insurance, are they going to provide either of those? If you don't have health insurance, it's going to cost you a lot of money. How many holidays are you going to get? What kind of vacation do you get? How many hours a week are you expected to work? There are consulting firms out there that will expect you to bill 40 hours or more a week. Those 40 billable hours doesn't include the downtime or the time in training or writing proposals or some other stuff a lot of times. It just depends. It varies from company to company. How far are you going to have to drive to get to your job? If you have an hour and a half commute to get to your job, you work 8 or 9 hours, then you have an hour and a half to get home, that's 12, 13 hours out of your day. You add 8 hours of sleep, and now you're down to 3 hours of time a day to do everything else, and that's just not enough. So think about what kind of lifestyle you want to have. Understand that you're going to have challenges as you grow older, as you go out and enter the real world. You're going to need to figure out what your priorities are. Okay, this is kind of the way I looked at it, and still do. My faith is the most important priority to me. It is the basis for pretty much everything else that goes on in my life. And I'll make a statement about that here. I'm going to talk about several of these in a little more detail. Marriage. Okay, I can remember when I was in Boy Scouts, so I was probably in about 6th grade or so. I had no clue what the real world was like when I was in 6th grade. And my dad drove me to a Boy Scout meeting, and our scoutmaster was talking about having gotten engaged. My dad was congratulating him, and he goes, well, Pat, and my dad talked really slow. He goes, Pat, just remember, marriage is like a mousetrap. It's easy to get into, but it's hard to get out of. And those words have always stuck with me, okay, for some reason. And so I can remember the afternoon, it was a Friday afternoon in November in 1985, when I was end of the day in my office and I had this diamond ring in my hand, and I'm going, do I really want to ask this girl to marry me? Am I absolutely sure? And the words, when I was growing up, David Crockett was a big deal. And, okay, there had been a movie in the 50s about David Crockett, and there was a song. I'm sure y'all know who David Crockett is, at least the ones that grew up in Texas. But there were raccoon hats and stuff like that in the 60s, okay? So his a little more prominent in the stories and all that. And David Crockett had the saying, be sure you're right, then go ahead. And I can remember sitting there with that ring in my hand, and am I sure I'm right? Is this something I really, really want to do? And I absolutely was certain. So that evening, I asked her to marry me, and we got married the next summer, and this past summer we celebrated 30 years. It's been a wonderful experience, okay? I couldn't have made a better decision. But it's not something you do on the spur of the moment. When you have kids, they will rule your life, okay? They take over almost everything you do until they grow up and leave. And then you know what happens after they leave? For a lot of parents, they come back. Okay? And we've experienced that, and we welcome them with open arms. It's a different situation, but and y'all can probably attest to the fact that when you go home for the summer to live with your family, it's different than it was when you were growing up in the house. Okay? You're transitioning into an adult relationship with your parents, which if you approach it right can be really enjoyable. Finances cause more stress than anything else in your life. And your parents are getting older day by day. Okay, most of y'all have parents that are probably pretty close to my age. Some may be younger, some a little older. We're maybe not quite to our golden years, but the concept of retirement is not a distant event way off in the future. And the reality is the time that you're going to have to be able to enjoy your parents is more limited now than it was when you were a kid. And you want to have a relationship with your parents, and you want to have that relationship while you can enjoy it, not after you've gotten in a situation where you have to take care of them. And then somewhere in that list of priorities is going to be your job. Okay? Because if you don't have a job, unless you have a trust fund, you need the job to have the money to be able to buy the food, the shelter, and everything else that allow you to enjoy life. Sometimes that job priority may trump a lot of other stuff just because of a short-term priority. But don't let your job become the ruling factor in your life. Okay, dining etiquette. Some of y'all may have parents, typically a mom, who read the Emily Post book and really beat good manners into you. I can usually see those parents when you're out, or the kids of those parents when you're out in a social setting. Some of you may not have had that. If you're not comfortable with your dining skills, put some effort into learning those. On the website, there is some information about dining etiquette, and actually right now I'm not sure it's posted, but I will put that up later. That gives you a few simple rules, like when the butter dish goes around, what do you do with the butter? You've got a roll, and someone passes you a butter dish. You take your butter knife, and what do?
Put it on the plate.
You put the butter on the bread plate. You don't butter your roll from the butter dish. Okay? And there's a lot of little things like that on how to function properly at in a dining setting. Okay? And so I'll put a B and a D here, because one of the things that was always perplexing to me when I'm sitting at a round table that has all these plate settings and lots of glasses is which set of glasses is mine, especially when you're the first one to sit down. Okay, so you sit down and you hold your hands like this, and you have a B and you have a D, and the B stands for bread and the D stands for drinks. And that's how you can remember which is which. However, I will tell you that the hotel staff that set up this stuff at some hotels don't necessarily follow those rules. So just be aware of that. Your health is important. Okay, so what's the alternative to being healthy?
Unhealthy.
Not living, okay? And that's not a good alternative. All right? You need to take care of yourselves. Y'all are in good physical condition. Young people don't like insurance. Why?
We're invincible.
You're invincible and you're healthy, and you don't need to go to the doctor very often. It's the people my age that are always going to the doctor and have some ailment because of the things we did when we were 25 and 30 years old that ended up being bad for our bodies. Okay? The internist that I used to go to before he retired would tell me that my kid's generation is going to be the first generation that has a lifespan shorter than my generation. And he said this because he's basically said, don't eat any meat, just eat, if it's not green or a nut, don't eat it. Okay? And he really promoted a healthy lifestyle. He said that the food chain that our society has with all the treated and other aspects of the way the food is processed is actually going to hurt the lifespan of people in our society today. I've talked about this in one of the lectures, how our infrastructure choices can impact how much exercise you get. And we're seeing that in some segments of the population. Learn to be healthy. Make sure you eat well, you exercise, and do things to take care of yourself, because when you're 50, 55 years old and you're 60 pounds overweight, you're just waiting for a heart attack. Okay? And when you carry around all that weight, it tears up your knees and it creates a lot of other problems. The best thing to do is don't gain the weight. Okay. Learn a couple of tests, and I think I've talked about these on and off during the class this semester. They apply to life, they apply to work. The smell test is when you hear something or see something, ask yourself, does this make sense? Okay, because you buy some food, you stick it in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 days, you forget about it, now you're hungry and you don't want to go to the grocery store, so you take it out, you unwrap it, you smell it. If it smells funny, hopefully you throw it away. Okay? I know at least once in my life I learned that lesson the hard way. But I was a quick learner. I only did it once. So when you hear something on the radio or you see a news story on Facebook, ask yourself, could that possibly be real? Okay, because right now this concept of fake news is kind of getting a lot of attention. When someone gives you the result of some engineering analysis, you go, that just doesn't make sense. It may be because it truly doesn't make sense. They did it wrong. And maybe it's your boss that's telling you that, or giving you these results. And if that's the case, there are nice ways to say, I don't understand why that's the right answer. Can you explain it to me? Hey, that's not a real technical skill, and as you gain experience, it's something that will be easier and easier to do. Your boss is going to be able to look at your first report and in 5 or 10 minutes point out 2, 3, 4, 5 things that you did wrong or weren't quite right, and that's just a skill you learn. The other test you need to learn is a so what test. Okay, I get kind of wrapped up in following traffic laws when I'm driving, and I want other people to follow traffic laws. And when they don't, I have a tendency, I don't go road rage or anything, but I go, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they did that. Look at them, queue cutting, driving by all these cars, waiting in the line, and then cutting in. That's just not right. And then, so what? All right, is it worth getting all worked up over? Is it worth putting in 3 days of effort on something to get it exactly right when the only person that actually is going to realize the benefit of all that extra time may be you? Okay, so sometimes good enough is okay. It just depends on the situation. So here's the other part of my faith concept. I'm not going to preach to you. I'm not going to say anything other than in my life, my faith in God is very, very important to me. It has sustained me in many different situations, and I would encourage you to develop faith in God yourself. And if that's a conversation you want to have outside of the classroom, I would be happy to have that with you. My rule number 2 is there's no substitute for your family. your family will stick by you in times, good times and in bad times. No matter what happens, your family will likely be there for you. Parents are very forgiving of their children as long as you don't take advantage of them. When you interview for jobs, you will frequently hear a statement from the person or a boss or someone you're interviewing with saying, "Oh, we're like a family in this company." Okay? That happens all the time. And as long as you are working for that company, you are part of the company family. But you leave the company, they're not going to continue to send you a Christmas bonus. They're not going to check up on you when you're sick. They're not going to give you a ride to work when your car's broken down. They're not going to take care of you the same way that a family member would after you leave that company. So you may continue to have really close relationships with one or two people that you had worked with and developed a personal relationship with at that company. But the company itself is not going to be your family. So don't substitute your work family for your real family. Your ethics and morals are very, very important. Always take the high road. Do what's right. As long as you do what's right, you don't have to worry about what you might have done wrong. It's the story about lies is, it's really hard to keep up with a bunch of lies if you tell lies all the time. The easiest thing to do is just tell the truth, and as long as you're telling the truth, you don't have to remember what lies you've been going around telling people. When my dad passed away almost 3 years ago, I got a lot of emails from his colleagues, who are also my colleagues, talking about how they really respected him and how he was a man of integrity, and they use that phrase a lot. He was someone who did what they said they would do and stuck by their principles no matter what the situation was. That really meant a lot to me. I always felt that way about my dad, but it was gratifying to see people that I respect in the profession tell me the same thing about him. And you could do a whole lot worse than to have some of your coworkers and people you know professionally and personally tell your children that you were a man or a woman of integrity after you pass away. Remember that happiness is a state of mind. I mean, you can be having the most miserable day of your life, and when someone sees you and is walking by and says, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" that person probably doesn't want to hear all the things that are going wrong in your day. All right? And if you allow yourself to get down in the dumps, it's really a lot harder to get out of that. Okay? Happiness, as I said, is a state of mind. You get to choose every day and every minute of every day whether you want to have a positive outlook or a negative outlook. And engineers oftentimes have this bad rep for looking at something and saying, "All right, there's my problem, here's my input data, here are my potential solutions. How can I turn this into a problem to be solved?" Okay? And so engineers can often be viewed kind of in a negative light because we're always trying to solve a problem even when a problem doesn't really exist. And that's just our nature. We're problem solvers. That's what we're trained to do. That's a beneficial skill. Absolutely. People look up and respect engineers, look up to and respect engineers because they can solve problems and they're analytical. But approach it in a positive perspective and just be happy. My mom used to tell me, always smile. Always smile all the time. So I actually started doing that when I was a teenager. We were walking through some store and I'm smiling. She goes, "What are you smiling about?" I said, "Well, you told me to smile." She goes, "Oh, I thought you were up to something." So when you're a teenager, or when your teenager's starting to smile all the time, they make you wonder. But smiling is important. People like to see people smiling. Appearances are important. Okay? When you graduate and go to work, t-shirts, shorts, and flip-flops are not going to be the dress of the day. I hate to say that. In fact, you may even have to make sure that you're presentable when you go to the grocery store or the hardware store or just running errands about town, because you never know when you're going to run into a client for a project that you're working on. And when you're young and trying to establish yourself, you always need to make that good impression. Now you get to be more established, closer to retirement like I am, you can go to Lowe's with a day's worth of growth on your face and covered in mud because you're working on your sprinkler system. But when you're young, that may not be an option for you. Carry yourself well. Pick up your feet when you're walking. Sit straight. All the stuff your mom always told you. Sit up straight and in your chair and all that. That's important because body language conveys messages to people. Engineers typically don't clue in on body language very well. But some people do, and business people are really good at that. And if you're sitting in a meeting and you're slouched over and your arms are crossed and your eyes are wandering, that's sending some important messages. So remember that. Also learn to read and learn to write and speak well. Your ability to convey ideas is the most important skill that you as an engineer will have and need to have. No matter how much stuff is between your ears, if you can't convey that to someone, it has no value. And how are you going to convey that to someone? You either have to write about it or you have to talk about it. We don't do a lot in the engineering curriculum to prepare you. That's kind of on-the-job training stuff. So I'd encourage you to work on developing that skill. There's a group called Toastmasters, and they've got chapters in most cities in the world. And it's all about developing public speaking skills. And I'd encourage you, if you feel like that's an area you want to improve, look up Toastmasters. Find the local chapter and get involved. Understand that young is relative. To y'all, anyone over the age of 30 is old. Okay, when you're 29, 30 will not be old. Trust me. So, as you get older, the concept of young covers more and more territory. Y'all are young to me. And so, the other thing that happens is as you get older, your body starts declining. When I talk about in my other classes vision and the importance of vision in traffic engineering, talk about the fact that in your early 20s, your vision's at its peak performance. It's only going to get worse. And that applies to a number of things in your body. The human body peaks somewhere in the mid to late 20s and begins declining from there. And so you get out of school and you're not walking to a different class every hour, hour and a half. You're sitting at a computer all day, and the first thing you're going to do is start gaining weight. Okay? And somewhere around 30, 35, you're going to start seeing a few wrinkles around your eyes. And depending on how much sleep you get and how well you take care of yourself, those wrinkles may come earlier, may come later. Your hair will start to turn gray. In 307 last spring, I showed a video where I was on modern marbles. And the students were watching it. This was before class. And I finally had to say, do y'all recognize that person? And one of the students goes, is that you? Because my hair was completely dark. 15 years earlier, I actually had dark brown hair at one point in my life. Your vision will get worse. I just talked about that. Oh, I forgot to say, all right, some of you, among the male portion of the population in particular, are going to have to worry about more than just gray hair. Okay, you're going to have to worry about keeping your hair. And, that's a personal choice whether you want to embrace that or do something about it. I know people who don't like the gray hair and they color their hair. So there are things you can do about some of this. Your vision. There's modern science, medical science can do a lot to help improve vision. Or you can just wear glasses. Your teeth. Hey, I had my dentist appointment yesterday and he goes, you have really, really good teeth. So I'm very fortunate. He says, you wouldn't believe how bad the teeth are for some of the people that come in, even young people. And that creates a lot of problems for them. You don't want to have to eat strained peas your whole life when you get to be 50, 60 years old. Your coordination and strength will start declining. Okay, some of you, my son played baseball. He was a left-handed pitcher. He could throw in the low to mid-80s. And by the time he was a senior in high school, by the time he was a senior in high school, I couldn't catch him anymore. It scared me to death. I feared for my teeth, my nose, and my eyes. And so I just don't have that level of coordination. I remember a story about Harrison Ford, and he married a younger woman, an actress, and they had a kid, and they were traveling somewhere, and they were out of diapers, so they went in a convenience store, and Harrison Ford asked the clerk, he said, "Where's your diaper section?" And the clerk took him to the adult diaper section. Okay, because he was, I don't know, probably my age, 60, 65 years old. And you'd be surprised how many people in their late 50s and 60s wear adult diapers, because your bladder doesn't work as well at that age as it did when people are your age. And there's other things with aging, okay? But understand that you accept those things. Why do you accept these declines? Because what's the choice? You're going to quit aging? We don't have the Dobie Gray painting in our society. So it's worth the price of some of this in order to be able to continue enjoying life. Just understand that some of the stuff you do at age 25, 30, 35 may accelerate the onset of some of these issues. Particularly what you do to your body between ages 40 and 45. And there will come a time, a day, and I'll tell this story. I used